Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we were recording this session so you have it for you can look back on it whenever you want. Okay, so again, so let's go back to the Google form. I've sent this to you already. So what it asks for you to do is to assess a grade basically from 1 to 5 for the 5 questions for each group. The questions include an introductory comment, presentation skills, content as in is it informative, impression, what's your overall impression, and lastly, were the environmental issues addressed in the particular presentation. So those are the 5 categories, and your score is from 1 to 5, poor, fair, satisfactory, very good, and excellent. All right, so each group from each of you will have a score out of 25, and I'll be doing the same thing from my end. The only scores you won't have are, of course, for your own presentation, which you won't score. Okay, so again, is that clear to everybody? And after, oh, William?
Hello?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so for the Google Forms, since they're all mandatory questions, we have to answer on our own group. Do you just want us to put like a certain score for our own group, or?
No, for your own group, just put NA or just leave it blank. Right?
Just leave it blank, it won't let you go through.
You leave it blank and that's pretty fine. I know,
okay.
I have the names of everybody in each group, so I know which people shouldn't be scoring their own group, so that's not a problem. But just leave it blank, that's the easy thing to do.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so after the presentations tonight, so this will probably take an hour and a half to 2 hours to get all 5 groups in. Please return the Google form to me. You do that and you get a 10 out of 10 for participation for tonight's class. And then what I can tell you is that in the next couple of days, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through everybody's grades. And again, and I mentioned this last class, I will take your best 75% of your participation grades, the best 75% of your in-class breakout session grades. And so that together with your score from this will give you your final score for everything in this course, with the exception of the final exam, which is on July the 14th at 7 o'clock. So I will send the Google form for the exam to you all at that time. You'll have 3 hours to do it. The final exam is over 20%. So you will have a really good idea in the next couple of days, you know, basically what your final grade will look like after I've taken out the lowest marks for your participation and the breakout sessions, comprising 80% of your total. All right, so you'll be looking, you know, pretty much at what your final total will be, with some small adjustment for your final exam. All right, guys. So the first group is the Hereditary Chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en. Now, does group number 1? Do you want to see if you can share your PowerPoint with the class? See if you can do that, and if you can't, I'll bring it up by way of me sharing it.
Yeah, I'll give it a try right now.
Good.
So it says when I click share screen at the bottom, it says that you disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, all right. Okay, so let's see if I can fix that. I don't see anything on my list that would fix that. I'm looking though.
Maybe you have to unshare yours for them to share it.
Well, let's do that. All right. I will stop sharing my PowerPoint and then go for it. See if you can do something with that.
The same thing's popping up.
Wow. All right.
You'll have to make her host.
I'm sorry?
You'll have to make her host, and then she could share a screen.
Okay, so let's see now. So who wants to, I can see if I can make somebody the host. How I do that, I don't know, but I'll try. So who wants to be the host?
Me, please, Megan.
Megan, okay, Megan. So Megan, make host.
Still disabled, Miles.
Megan, you're now the host.
Host disabled. To participate in screen sharing.
No, Megan is the host. So
Can you guys see my screen?
Yep, Megan, you're
Okay.
up. Good stuff. Okay, go for it.
See what I can do here. I've never done this either, so let's give it a try. I'm just checking in. Can you hear that?
Yes, I can hear. Everybody else can hear?
Okay.
William says he can't hear it. Megan, when you went to share, there's a little button at the bottom of the screen that says optimize sound. You probably need to push that before you share it. Do you want to try that? So stop sharing the PowerPoint.
I don't.
So if you
Oh,
stop,
stop sharing.
stop
Okay.
sharing, all right. And then when you push share screen, on the bottom left-hand corner, there's going to be two buttons that basically say optimize sound.
Oh, okay.
You push,
Optimize screen sharing for video clip.
yep, push that button. Both of them should be
Yep, they're both check marked.
okay. So now go to share your PowerPoint, and everybody should be good. All right.
Okay, so I'll just do this one again and make sure here.
Okay. Anybody have problems hearing this? Hearing me? Hearing Megan?
Here is Group 1's project on the hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en. Group 1 involved Olivia, Joy, Alyssa, Megan, and Madison. Was that better?
Okay. Kate can hear. William said he can't.
Yep, that's better. That's much better. The video's going through.
Okay.
Oh yeah, we're good. We're good now. Go for it. Okay.
Okay.
Great. So you guys can start again.
I don't know how to change the slide. It won't let me click next slide. Oh, maybe down here. Here is.
There you go. Good.
We'll keep trying.
Well, you did. You've advanced your slide.
Who are they? So there are 7 hereditary chiefs that compose the board of directors of the Wet'suwet'en. The names are listed here, and I'm not sure how to pronounce them, so I'm not going to try because I just, out of respect, I don't want to mispronounce these names. But the list is here to look at. So next, we're going to look at their mission. So the hereditary chiefs of Wet'suwet'en are dedicated to the preservation and enhancement of their culture, traditions, and territories. Their goals consist of ensure a self-reliant nation, ensure an effective, responsive, and accountable infrastructure, ensure continual and effective communications, ensure responsible jurisdiction of the resources for equitable and sustainable use, ensure effective financial management, and finally, ensure a government model based upon the solid foundation of the hereditary system. The proposal for the Coastal GasLink pipeline. The pipeline will be approximately 670 kilometers, which will deliver natural gas across northern British Columbia. This pipeline will travel through many First Nations territories to transport the natural gases. And their goal is to transport fracked gas through the pipelines from northeast British Columbia to Kitimat, where the gas will be released for shipment to markets in Asia. The pipeline goes directly through the Wet'suwet'en territory, and therefore the Coastal GasLink pipeline needs the specific consent of the Wet'suwet'en people. The fight and protests have been going on for over a year now, and this is a quote from one of the members saying, "We are the title holders, and the province must address the issue of our title and if they want to gain access to our lands."
Hari saya hagwalna satnay kinarlaya hamazaka tisat laksalyo dani bis hababe yaktak kinanuk no adan tiyo anuk no adan.
Can you guys see the video I'm sharing right now?
I can't. I can hear the audio, just I can't see the video. Like just the video's not playing through.
Oh, okay. I don't know how to do that part. Miles, do you know how to do that?
Yeah,
If
no,
I click resume share, will that just go? Will it show the video?
well, you're already sharing.
What can you guys see on your screen right now?
The first, your title slide.
Okay, so, well, that's weird. I wonder if I go here and click one, and not this one, can you see this?
Nothing's changed yet.
Oh,
I think it seems like your screen is like frozen momentarily.
Megan, I think you need to go to the web page and then just click the link and watch it. Share the video on your web page, on your browser.
I'm on YouTube right now on my screen. I have no idea.
Yeah, if you're going to embed a video into PowerPoint, it has to be done a certain way to ensure that it actually plays during the PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. Well, it's like a 6-minute video about like how the hereditary chiefs rejected the pipelines.
Did you wanna like put it on like, do you have the link on the video like there? Like
I have the video open and I could
it seems like
share the link to the chat.
It seems like your screen is just like frozen, like your mouse is just in one place and it's just on the title screen.
Well, what if we continue on in the presentation and then I can try sharing the links to our videos? We just have 2 videos at the end.
That'd be great.
Okay. Okay, now I have to get back to where I was here. Okay, I'm having troubles getting rid of this video. I can't find to
Why
how
don't
to
you,
go.
why don't you stop sharing it and then share it again?
Oh,
Do you want me to share the PowerPoint?
yeah, we have the audio like in the PowerPoint.
Right.
If you did want to, like we have like the little videos of like the voices recorded and stuff. But
Okay,
yeah.
well, why don't I share the PowerPoint with the class and then you tell me
You
when.
can't, so you can't see my screen right now?
Yeah, we can see it now.
Oh, we can.
Okay, so if I do this, we're back, we're off the video, right?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, so sorry about that. I'm trying to figure it out too.
Okay, keep going then.
Now the next few slides are going to all be part of the what the hereditary chiefs would like to see. So starting off with number 1, the site-specific plans in regards to clearing and construction in wetlands. So the Wet'suwet'en chiefs have concerns regarding the well-being of the sockeye and Chinook stocks. Concerns in regards of the fresh water that will be received by the fish that reside in their waters, as well as the water that is available for the inhabitants in the upper Fraser Basin. And the construction of the Coastal GasLink pipeline will affect the water resources and their fisheries. Here is a quote from one of the chiefs from the Wet'suwet'en. "We will do whatever it takes to defend our lands and waters against this threat." Continuing on the list of things of what the hereditary chiefs would like to see, number 2 is British Columbia needs to address title issues. No access of the lands of Wet'suwet'en territory until British Columbia addresses title issue. Any proposed gas pipeline will impact the Wet'suwet'en title, and hereditary chiefs are responsible for the territory within their individual reserves as stated in the Indian Act, making the construction of the pipeline disrupt their Aboriginal right to their lands. So this is just our second video, kind of showing some arrests that happened at some of the protests for this. So I'll just skip this for now. I'm going to have to unshare and share again, but we're almost done, so I'll do it quickly. Number 3 on this list is the need to protect their land. So Wet'suwet'en chiefs are here to protect their lands and to ensure that future generations of the Wet'suwet'en are able to live and benefit from what the land provides. They are not opposed to commercial and economic development on their traditional land as long as the proper cultural protocol is followed and that it will protect their territory from environmental damage. The proposed pipeline would be vulnerable to the terrain stability issues, water issues, and catastrophic events if the pipeline were to break, burst, or leak. So this is a continuation of number 3, the need to protect their land. The Coastal GasLink pipeline causes stress as it contains significant effects on the habitation found in their lands. It will disturb the habitat with disease, mortality, reproduction, survival, recruitment, and production. And this will have an infringement on the Wet'suwet'en title as well as their law. So here is a quote from a different chief. We cannot risk the health of our land and the future generations for short-term financial gain. So this is our final slide and its future recommendations. Maintaining access during the project operations to carry out traditional use activities. Engaging with the Aboriginal groups in regards to the construction planning and project design of the future project. Engaging with the Aboriginal groups with the development on environmental management plans. Opportunities to participate in the construction monitoring. To provide plans for aquatic or riparian offsets if requested, and requirement to consider traditional use studies is submitted. Thank you for listening to Group 1's project on the hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en.
Thank you, Megan. Does anybody in the class have any questions for group number 1? Okay, so now I will somehow make Megan not the host. Not sure how I do this now. Oh, there you go. I'm the host again. All right, guys, so I'm going to go back now to my PowerPoint. So we're moving on to group number 2. All right, so we have this YouTube embedded into the PowerPoint, so we'll watch this YouTube, and then the group number 2 can make any further comments after the YouTube runs, and any questions thereafter.
Our topic was the First Nation chiefs of Wet'suwet'en. The Coastal GasLink pipeline is a key component of a $40 billion LNG Canada export terminal at Kitimat, BC, designed to ship natural gas to international markets. It is on the territory of the Haisla Nation, which supports the project. The LNG export terminal is backed by one of the world's largest energy companies and 3 state-owned firms owned by Korea, China, and Malaysia. In 2011, Shell, which owns a 40% share of the project, issued a tender to build a pipeline to feed the terminal, which was won by a subsidiary of TC Energy Corp, then known as TransCanada, which created Coastal GasLink. LNG Canada's decision to move ahead with the project was announced in Vancouver in October 2018, with Horgan and Trudeau in attendance. It came at a time when the Trudeau government was facing dark skies over the energy sector with a year left before the next federal election. The federal Liberal government had recently approved the Pacific Northwest LNG project, only to see it fall apart. The Energy East pipeline project had collapsed, and the Trans Mountain pipeline was tangled in the courts. At the announcement, Trudeau said the project was the largest private sector investment in Canada's history. It shows what's possible when you consult with Indigenous and local communities. Now, despite calls for the Prime Minister's involvement from hereditary chiefs, the Trudeau government has distanced itself from the ongoing conflict over the pipeline integral to the overall LNG Canada project. The Prime Minister's office and the Office of the Crown Indigenous Relations Minister, Carolyn Bennett, referred questions to Natural Resources Minister Seamus O'Regan's office. O'Regan's office said in an emailed statement that the issue was up to
We lost sound.
And 20 First Nations band councils have signed agreements in support of the project, including 5 of the 6 bands councils in the Wet'suwet'en Nation. However, the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs say those band councils are only responsible for the territory within their individual reserves because their authority comes only from the Indian Act. The hereditary chiefs, who are the leaders of the nation's governance system in place before the imposition of the Indian Act, assert authority over 22,000 square kilometers of the nation's traditional territory, an area recognized as unceded by the Supreme Court of Canada in a 1997 decision. UNDRIP, United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, also known as UNDRIP. This is taken from a blog by J.P. Gladue. Adoption in BC and Canada of the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP, is a real opportunity for strengthening the relationships that have been so fractured for such a long time now. The BC government, introducing its Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People Act, said it's about ending discrimination, upholding basic human rights, and ensuring more economic justice and fairness. The federal government says the UN Declaration is a statement of the collective and individual rights that are necessary for the survival, dignity, and well-being of the Indigenous peoples. Both governments will move over time to ensure their laws and policies are in harmony with the principles of UNDRIP. This creates no new rights. As BC noted, the Constitution is clear. Indigenous peoples have rights in their territories, and successive court cases have upheld these. The conflict is centered on a Forest Service road that leads into the heart of Wet'suwet'en territory, about 300 kilometers west of Prince George, BC. The road is the only access point for workers to build the Coastal GasLink pipeline through that area. Our topic was the First Nation chiefs of Wet'suwet'en. Mark of the to leave the territory. The chiefs cite a report from the UN Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, urging Canada to halt the construction of the Site C Dam, Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, and the Coastal GasLink pipeline. The committee says these projects do not have the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples. The UN letter draws criticism from groups including the First Nations LNG Alliance, who say Indigenous groups who support the projects were not consulted before the committee took a position on the project. Coastal GasLink says in a news release that it will delay remobilization at the site under dispute, while engagement and a negotiated resolution remain possible. The company says it requested a meeting with the Wet'suwet'en hereditary leadership. This request is repeated in the days and weeks after January 7th, and the chiefs maintain they're not interested in meeting with the company and only want to have government-to-government conversations with the provincial and federal governments. Also on January 7th, Coastal GasLink posts the injunction order. Under the terms of the court order, this triggers a 72-hour window of time frame for the road to be cleared of debris and made passable for the company and its contractors. RCMP dismantled the barrier at Kitimetin checkpoint at the 44-kilometer mark of the Maurice West Forest Service Road. The Mounties say support beams appeared to have been cut on the bridge, making it unsafe. Police make 4 more arrests. Wet'suwet'en supporters blocked the only road back to Houston. temporarily preventing RCMP from returning to their detachment with those who'd been arrested. Police announced the exclusion zone and checkpoint would be relocated more than 20 kilometers closer to Houston on the road. RCMP arrest 11 people at a warming room after they refused to leave. Police say in a statement that several people had barricaded themselves inside, some using chains in an effort to prevent their arrest. Police move into Innistoten, where the Wet'suwet'en have, for more than a decade, been reestablishing a presence in what began as an effort to block proposed energy projects through the area. Among 7 arrested are Carla Tate, the Director of Clinical Programming for the Innistoten Healing Center, and Frida Houston, longtime spokesperson for Innistoten and one of the named defendants in the injunction brought forward by Coastal GasLink. BC Premier John Horgan says the province has discharged its responsibility with respect to the Coastal GasLink pipeline project, which is opposed by 5 Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs. The RCMP announced it will stand down on enforcement of the injunction while province and hereditary chiefs engage in a 7-day discussion period. The BC government, Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs, and Coast GasLink all issue statements in the late evening saying the talks have failed to find a resolution. RCMP announced at a news conference they are ready to enforce the injunction order and urge pipeline opponents to leave the area or face arrest. Before dawn, RCMP began enforcing the injunction. 6 people are arrested at a camp at kilometer 39. The supporters of the Wet'suwet'en. RCMP say they have concluded major enforcement operations. The arrests by RCMP in Wet'suwet'en territory have triggered railway blockades and other protests across the country. Members of the Tyendinaga Mohawk Nation staged a demonstration near railway tracks east of Belleville, Ontario, that led to a shutdown of passenger and rail traffic through eastern Ontario. February 24th, 2020, supporters set up a blockade protest at the Sault Ste. Marie International Bridge entrance to show solidarity. Main environmental concerns. The Coastal GasLink pipeline will be transporting LNG, a natural gas that is considered non-toxic. However, the concern is that if there is a leak in the pipeline, it could lead to potential for explosion or forest fire. The 2014 Coastal GasLink Pipeline Project Assessment Report considered how the project would impact animals in the area. The animal group predicted the experience of the most significant effects would be towards the Heart Ranges and the Telkwa caribou herds. These herds are in the provincial conservation list and are considered threatened. 32% of the functional habitat of the Heart Range caribou herd will be affected by the pipeline. The pipeline will contribute significantly to provincial and federal greenhouse gas emissions. Some emissions will be created by the construction of the pipeline, but it will mostly come from the pipeline operation. The report says at full operational capacity, the project is estimated to release up to 3.517 megatons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. That's approximately 5.54% of British Columbia and 0.49% of Canada's total GHG emissions from the year of 2017. This makes it more difficult for Canada to meet emission reduction targets.
This is a Smile Direct Club aligner. It's how Smile Direct Clubs... A breakthrough today in those tense talks in BC to settle that pipeline protest and end rail blockades across Canada. There's word a proposed arrangement on land rights and title has been reached between Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs and the federal government. Our Sarah McDonald is in northern BC with details of the proposal.
History in the making in northern BC.
This is where it starts. The duty to consult, as well as the rights and title.
With a potentially precedent-setting proposed agreement reached between Indigenous leaders and government officials.
A process to recognize rights and title for the future. We've done that in 3 days and 3 nights.
The conclusion of exhaustive, intensive, and at times difficult dialogue on rights and title and reconciliation, and exactly what that looks like going forward.
We are definitely looking at sitting down with the RCMP again, because it's not over.
The eyes of the nation fixated on talks only a select few could actually witness, all unfolding behind closed doors. As unrest among supporters of the Wet'suwet'en Nation chiefs, opposed to a natural gas pipeline, ripples cross-country.
It is about making sure that this never happens again, that the rights holders will always be at the table, and that is the way through for Canada.
But that proposed agreement, which still needs the approval of the Wet'suwet'en people, is not retroactive. And this multi-billion-dollar project backed by band councils remains fully permitted, with work on hiatus for the duration of discussions resuming Monday. The future of already tenuous and complicated relationships remains clouded in uncertainty. Though one thing is undisputed: all this and this about far more than just a pipeline in a province sitting on territory that's mostly unceded. And the Premier of BC and the Prime Minister both said to have been intimately involved in the creation of that draft agreement. Both of them said to be ready and willing to sign it, so long as the Wet'suwet'en people are first. Robin.
Sarah McDonald reporting from northern BC. It's not yet clear if the progress made in British Columbia this weekend will satisfy thousands of protesters who've spent the last few weeks setting up blockades and shutting down rail lines across the country. Many demonstrations have gone far beyond original concerns over that natural gas pipeline. David Aiken explains.
Canada! These protesters gathered outside one of the world's biggest mining industry conferences, which opened Sunday in downtown Toronto, to let the world know they have a beef with the global mining industry.
We know that if we allow their business as usual to continue, it will literally lead to an unlivable planet.
They were also standing in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en, but they had more concerns on their plate. Same thing in eastern Ontario, where the Mohawks at Tyendinaga had shut down a major CN rail line for nearly 3 weeks. Protesters support the Wet'suwet'en, but they are also demanding progress on their own failed land claim talks. And those who blocked roads around the Port of Vancouver earlier in the week also want to block oil pipelines like the Trans Mountain. So far, the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs have declined to give any advice to these protesters, saying it's not their place. But many of those mounting protests in their support are also waiting for their cue.
Our commitment given to continue to support until such time as the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs are satisfied and request that we stand down, not only us, but across the rest of the country, is something, that commitment that we've given.
A strong economy.
Meanwhile, the Trudeau government is trying to balance the right to protest against the right to earn a living.
Protest does not and cannot include the right to stop Canadians from going about their business, from doing their jobs, from living their lives.
And yet, the Trudeau government has been hesitant about taking strong action to end these protests, hoping instead that the weekend of dialogue in northern BC will be enough to ease tensions on the barricades across the country. Robin?
David Aiken in Ottawa. Thanks, David.
Hi, everyone. I'm here to share my story. I've only known superficial relationships.
Okay. Finally, we discuss the environmental assessment. The Coastal GasLink pipeline will be transporting liquefied natural gas, which is the LNG. LNG facilities are classified as industrial sites and must meet all federal, provincial, and municipal standards, codes, policies, and safety regulations. These regulations are constantly updated to ensure that the health, safety, and security of the environment and Canadian public are protected. The Canadian standards associated with CSA has a specific standard for LNG production, storage, and handling. This standard establishes essential requirements for the design, installation, and safe operation of LNG facilities. These provisions protected under the Environmental Bill of Rights and other environmental protection statutes. The Environmental Assessment Office of British Columbia, pursuant to the Environmental Assessment Act, stated that the likelihood of spillage was minimal. LNG is considered non-toxic and has low solubility in water. A pipeline accident or malfunction would lead to a leak where pressurized gas containing methane would rapidly enter the atmosphere. However, any leak is not expected to have negative impacts on the quality of ground or surface water or surrounding land. The report considered the impacts of the project would have on at least 21 animals, including grizzly bears and western screech owls. Out of all the wildlife considered, the Heart Ranges and the Telkwa caribou herds are predicted to experience the most significant adverse effects. Both of these herds are considered threatened under federal legislation and are on a provincial conservation list. Finally, here's a view of the hereditary chiefs from left to right, which is Rob Alfred, John Ridsdale, and Antoinette Austin. They oppose the Coastal GasLink pipeline, and this is a picture of them taking part in a rally in Smithers, BC on January 10th. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, great job putting that into a video. Does group number 2 have any further comments?
Yes, if I may, I do have a conclusion here that we have for our video, if I could just
All right, Tyler.
Go through that briefly. So to conclude, overall, the Wet'suwet'en First Nations is a dynamic, knowledgeable, and unified community that will continue to progress toward self-sufficiency through mutual respect, strong leadership, progressive, proactive, and strategic activities that advance the social, economic, and cultural values of their community. And with respect to the overall environmental outcome, the BC Environmental Assessment Office approved the pipeline project in 2014. The project submitted an application for permits to construct the pipeline to the BC Oil and Gas Commission and was granted all necessary permits between 2015 and 2016. A conference between the Wet'suwet'en BC government and Canadian governments was held, leading to a provisional land rights agreement. A consultation with local band councils was held as part of the planning and environmental review process. As a result of this, of the 1997 band council versus British Columbia, I can't pronounce the name, but it's a Wet'suwet'en Band Council. Court case of the Wet'suwet'en peoples, comprehensive consultations are required now for major projects in traditional lands. As a result of these consultations, the 42-kilometer south of Houston section of the pipeline was changed in 2017 to be 3.5 kilometers south of the original planned route. Approval was given by 20 First Nation bands councils, including the Wet'suwet'en elected band council, along the proposed route, and the government of British Columbia as part of their agreement. TC Energy announced it will be awarding $620 million in contract work to Northern BC First Nations as damages. The chiefs claim a responsibility to protect the traditional territory lands, stating that the role of the elected band councils pursuant to the Indian Act is to maintain reserves. And that's all.
Thanks, Tyler. Danica, you had your hand up?
Yeah, hi. I just would like to also add that Chief Maureen Luggy is one of the 5 Wet'suwet'en First Nation chief counselors that feel excluded about the rights in the title discussions on the tentative land agreement reached between the hereditary chiefs and the provincial federal government. She said that the negotiations and agreement has been moved forward without the Wet'suwet'en communities that were made on March 1st in 2020. Even though it has lessened the tension in the region about the GasLink natural gas pipeline, she feels that they should have a say on the traditional tradition making. They will also respect what the hereditary chiefs are doing for their land, but would like to also have more participation since they all care about the land and what is happening, since the federal and provincial government have ignored the current leaders' negotiations. That's all I'd like to add.
Okay, so my question is then, so what is the fundamental difference between the position taken by the hereditary chiefs and the majority of the First Nation chiefs?
Well, the hereditary chiefs seem to have more input and more say on what happens around the land than the current leaders. Is that what you're asking, or?
Yeah, I mean, there are a good deal.
It's a different rank, yeah, I guess.
Well, it's a different governance structure. The hereditary chiefs, are there as a function of time immemorial. The First Nation chiefs are there as a function of the Indian Act. They are the chiefs elected by the
council. The First Nations.
Can I add too that they're only there?
Yeah, one at a time. So Michelle.
The chief and council under the band council elections, they're only there for 2 years, and every 2 years they have to have elections, whereas hereditary chiefs are there till they die, and then they just hand it down to their son or whoever. When it's an elected thing, it's they don't just hand it down.
Right.
The people to vote.
Yeah, that's the structure. Tyler?
Yes, sir. As far as I understood, the hereditary chiefs were more leaning towards an approval for the pipeline, whereas the First Nation chiefs were a lot more against the pipeline and opposed to the pipeline.
Okay, good. Actually, it's probably the opposite of that. Most First Nation chiefs were in favor of it. There's about 13 of them that signed on to approve it, essentially because it was an income generator going through their the reserves, basically, whereas the hereditary chiefs originally were against it. You're right in that at the end of the day, the hereditary chiefs were on board, but the majority of First Nations were on board from the beginning. Any other comments from anybody in the class? All right, guys, thank you very much. Good job. Okay, so the next group is the Government of Canada group. So this is a Zoom MP4 video. So I'm going to share that with you now. It's not part of this PowerPoint. So hang on there. Okay.
This is Group 3, and our topic is on the Government of Canada's position on Coastal GasLink pipeline. Enjoy. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Fire 101. On today's episode, we'll be highlighting the Canadian government's position on the Coastal GasLink pipeline. However, unfortunately, Justin Trudeau is unable to join us today. So he sent two of his wonderful, just wonderful representatives, Sophie and Kate. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So here we have Sophie and Kate. Would you guys like to introduce yourself?
I'm Sophie, a government representative of Canada. Thank you so much for having us here today.
No problem. Nice to meet you.
And I'm Kate. I'm also a government representative, and I'm glad here to be here.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Kate.
Thank you.
So the first question that we'd like to ask is, what is the Coastal GasLink pipeline? Because many individuals don't know about this project. So what is it, and what is this project about? Yeah, okay.
Yes, you're right. I'd love to tell you. So the Coastal GasLink is a 670-kilometer pipeline that will supply NLG Canada with natural gas from northeastern British Columbia. The pipeline will run from Dawson's Creek area to the NLG Canada facility in Kitimat, after which the NLG Canada will prepare it for export to global markets by converting the gas to a liquefied state, also known as NLG. Coastal GasLink will not be producing or exporting natural gas or NLG. Their role is to ensure safe transportation of natural gas. The pipeline will be built to move 2.1 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas, with the potential up to 5 billion cubic feet per day, dependent on the number of compressors and meter facilities constructed.
Awesome. Awesome. An interesting question would be, what is the position that the government of Canada is taking in light of the position taken by the Indigenous persons here?
I'll answer this one.
Sure.
Is a night of negotiations between Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs and the federal and provincial governments. A tentative agreement on the land rights and title was reached on March 1st, 2020. We continue to put the Indigenous people, economic and environmental sustainability at the forefront. Our reason for this is that LNG Canada will provide 10,000 construction jobs on the Coastal GasLink pipeline and $24 billion in provincial revenue over the next 40 years. While Trudeau has been the Prime Minister, he has insisted that supporting Canada's struggling oil and gas sector, tackling climate change, and mending the country's relationships with its Indigenous people go hand in hand. We want to accomplish a negotiation that will result in a stronger tomorrow for the Wet'suwet'en and the country with the lowest economic and environmental impact obtainable. The Coastal Pipeline employs approximately 7,000 Canadians in 50 professions, trades, and fields. They also have a 92,600 kilometer network of natural gas pipelines supplying more than 25% of the clean burning natural gas consumed daily across Northern America to heat homes, fuel industries, and generate power. Coastal Pipeline moves approximately 20% of the Western Canadian's crude oil through 4,900 kilometers of pipelines, supplying U.S. refining markets in Illinois, Oklahoma, and Texas. It has interest in 10 power generation facilities combined with a capacity of approximately 6,000 megawatts, which is enough to power more than 6 million homes. Nearly half of the power provided is generated from a emissionless nuclear power facility. Coastal Pipelines are leaders in the development and operation of high-efficiency natural gas-fired generating stations.
Okay, so we're just looking at a tweet here that was posted on February 19, 2020 by Justin Trudeau at 7:39 p.m. So he said, we will continue working around the clock to find a lasting and peaceful resolution to the blockage across Canada. He hashtag Caroline Bennett, Mark Miller, and Bill Blair, while he continues to say that, and I discussed the latest development earlier today. So what could you tell us more about that? Is he still holding this position? What do you guys have to say?
Our government will continue to work night and day to peacefully find solutions to all requests made by hereditary chiefs, First Nation chiefs, and people of Wet'suwet'en. This is a statement from Trudeau affirming our position in relation to the Indigenous people of Canada. He states, finding a solution will not be simple. It will take determination, hard work, and cooperation. We are creating a space for peaceful and honest dialogue with willing partners. Everyone has a stake in getting this right. Trudeau also stated, for too long, the federal government has ignored Indigenous demands to solve lingering land and treaty disputes. We believe dialogue can be done in a constructive way to achieve a mutual agreement. I
agree. What steps did you guys take to ensure that the Indigenous persons' land, water, and resources will not be impacted due to the Coastal GasLink project?
I can answer this one. So the approved Coastal GasLink route was determined by considering Indigenous, landowner, and stakeholder input, the environment, agricultural and cultural values, land use compatibility, safety, constructability, and economics. There are many reasons why we, the Government of Canada, decided to implement this business proposal. Primarily, natural gas is one of the world's cleanest and safest energy sources. It's used for many purposes, such as to heat our homes, operate household appliances, make crop fertilizer, fabrics, plastics, and other everyday products. The Douglas Channel near Kitimat provides easy access to export the energy to Asian markets where coal-fired electricity is commonly used. This provides a unique opportunity for the country to help replace higher carbon emitting fuels, such as coal, as this will help to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions. Moreover, accessing the port requires construction of the Coastal GasLink.
Interesting. So, is there any plans implemented to secure, to preserve the environment for future generation? That's a good one.
Yeah. Yes, of course. So future emissions from the province's burgeoning liquefied natural gas, the LNG, industry could make the challenge of meeting its targets more difficult. There are several LNG products at various stages of development in BC, including the LNG Canada project, which is under construction in Kitimat. Phase 1 of the LNG Canada project will add an estimated 4 megatons of emissions per year. According to reports that we have conducted, if phase 2 goes ahead, total annual emissions will be estimated at 8.6 megatons by 2030 and 9.6 by 2050. So our government is committed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% below 2007 levels of 2030 and 80% by 2050.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome because it's very important for us to think about sustainability and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So Canada wants to be cost effective as well as environmentally sound in their decisions. We, the Canadian government, don't take going through someone's land lightly, and we want to do it the most effective way for all parties involved. With the pipeline going through this route, we, the Canadian government, want to enforce laws and bylaws to make sure every step is as safe and environmentally friendly as possible, as well as create resources in the form of jobs and sustain community involvement with the planning and execution of the pipeline. When looking at alternative pathways for the pipeline, we need to take into consideration their environmental impact compared to the route we want to take. With the help of the Wet'suwet'en people, while looking at an alternative route proposed by the hereditary chief of Wet'suwet'en, the environmental impact was actually increased due to large pipes having to be used, which would require more clearing of land and more material to house and support the pipes. This route was also around $8 million more capital investment, as well as running through 4 more First Nation lands.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it costs more to do the right thing, eh?
Yeah.
Well, we saw that there were like a lot of protests as it relates to lots of issues in 2020. One issue that really stood out was that relating to the pipeline. So my question is, what position did the government of Canada took on the railroad protests?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, what did you guys do? What happened?
Well, while we saw protests sparking up across, while the government take this very seriously, we need to create an open dialogue to resolve issues the people are protesting, not for the short term, but for the long term.
Okay, so interesting. So here is our leader, Justin Trudeau, talking about peaceful resolution that was uploaded to our Facebook page by one of our viewers. Take it away.
As people know, it is really important that we settle this issue of blockades in a peaceful manner, in a way that will be lasting. We do not want to see these problems continuing to jump up every few months in the coming years. We need to make sure that we're creating, through dialogue, through peaceful resolution, the kinds of lasting resolutions that we need. And that's why we're continuing to engage, continuing to negotiate, continuing to push towards that peaceful, lasting solution. We recognize that the decision to send in the police is a provincial decision, but we have full confidence in the provincial government and the provincial police's ability to do that if it comes to that. But our focus is very much on resolving this peacefully for the long term. But as I've said many times, I do not think it is ever appropriate to send the military against Canadian citizens.
Minister, there was a recent survey that came out, 61% of Canadians from Leisure's survey, they said they're unhappy with the way that the protests are going, with your handling of the protests. Not long ago, you warned during your pronouncement, you said the protests, the blockades, they risked straining or even jeopardizing Canadians' ongoing commitment towards reconciliation. Are you concerned that's already happening?
I think Canadians understand that we need to move forward as a country on creating opportunities, on creating growth, on ensuring that everyone has a real and fair chance to succeed. And the solutions we bring forward need to be durable, need to be long-term. You can't just put short-term Band-Aids on many of these challenges that people are facing. And that's why we're focused on doing the right things the right way. Canadians expect their governments to be thinking about the long term, and that's exactly what we're doing and what we will continue to do.
And that was the City News. So that video is quite interesting. Agreed. So could you explain the signing of the memorandum to our viewers?
Yes, of course. So the memorandum was signed May 14th, 2020. It was signed from the Government of Canada, the Wet'suwet'en Hereditary Chiefs, and the Wet'suwet'en First Nation Chiefs to grant the Wet'suwet'en people 22,000 square kilometers of territory. This memorandum immediately notices the Wet'suwet'en as main rights and title holders of the territory and land. This memorandum is to help with giving the Wet'suwet'en resources needed while in negotiations about the pipeline. Negotiations include water, a 6-month timeline, family wellness, a 6-month timeline, as well as land, water, fish, and much more in relation to sustainability and environmental factors.
Interesting. Okay, so when we look at the government of Canada and their views and opinions, we must not forget that we have a minority government with the Liberal Party holding 157 seats. We look at our closest ally in various topics in the NDP with Mr. Singh right here and his views on the topic. So we're going to take a quick look on this video to affirm his position.
Thing called past RCMP use of force against Indigenous people inappropriate, specifically in regards to Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs and their supporters. Singh and the NDP have shown support for BC pipeline projects in the past. After his meeting, Singh would not say if he was for or against the Coastal GasLink pipeline, but he did say that a lot of Indigenous groups are for the project and that a continuing dialogue with Indigenous people on both sides of the issue needs to continue.
There's a lot of complexity to the situation. We've got a number of Indigenous communities, the vast majority, the elected officials, as well as the communities that have come out saying that we want this project. So in terms of Indigenous sovereignty, there is a very clear voice that people want the project. In Wet'suwet'en, there is also a lot of complexity around what the community wants. There's lots of folks that are in favor of the project. There's the hereditary chiefs who've raised their concerns. This is something that has to be decided by the Indigenous community.
Interesting. All right, so this is my favorite part of the show. Do you agree, Sean? I agree. All righty. So in this segment, we're going to allow our viewers to call in and present their questions directly to the representatives of Justin Jr. Take it away. So this is user 2thick_ for you. What incentives did you offer Coastal GasLink to push this project forward?
I'll take this one. To attract the corporation behind LNG Canada, BC's NDP government offered a smorgasbord of direct subsidies worth an initial $5.35 billion in the form of tax reprieves, tax exemptions, and discounted electricity rates. Without government handouts, the LNG Canada project, set to begin operations by 2025, would not be economical for the companies involved. Demand for LNG has been growing, particularly in Asia.
Wow, that's a good question to think for us. Okay,
Yeah, that's a good question.
Do we have another caller? Wait, let's see. So this is 2cute_Patricia. What are the proposed alternative routes taken by the Canadian government?
I'll take this one. So throughout negotiations, proposed alternative routes were shown to the government. While Canada takes these into consideration, we need to look at the adverse environmental impact these alternative routes will have versus the one that we are on now. The hereditary chiefs proposed an alternative route, but with this alternative route, the environmental impact actually increased due to the larger pipes because of the land it has to traverse. Additional routes would have had $8 million capital investment increase with no environmental offset shown for it.
Okay, thank you so much. So that's the end of our show today. Thank you guys for tuning in to another fun and informative episode, right? I want to thank our visitors. Thank you for taking the time out to come and talk to us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us. This was great.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you for having us. I think it's important for viewers to be aware of Coastal GasLink and the Government of Canada's position on it. Have a great day.
Yeah. So thanks for our viewers for tuning in. And I'm Sha. And I'm Lex. And please remember, keep it blazing. And this is Hotspot 101. Bye, guys. See you next week.
All right, guys. So does anybody from group 3 want to have anything to add to that? By the way, that was very clever. The interview technique was, I quite enjoyed that, so good for you. Does anybody from group 3 want to add to your presentation? Questions from anybody else in the class? Okay. All right, so let's now move on to the next group, group 4. So group 4, again, we're going to be going back to PowerPoint slides. So who in group 4 wants to be the host to share your slides?
I'll be the host, Miles.
Is that a Rhett?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get you up here, Rhett. So let's see how we make you the host more. Okay, you're on. So don't forget, when you share in the bottom left-hand corner, optimize the video and the audio.
Okay, is it working?
No, not yet. I can't see it. Can anybody else? Try again, Rhett. There you go. Good stuff.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Class, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so group 4, we're taking the stance of the Albertan government and the Coastal GasLink pipeline. Group members are Jade, Adam, myself, and Pete. So there's an overview as to the pipeline and the Albertan stand. The Alberta government acknowledges the ongoing conflict that arise and the concerns that the First Nations have, and they have also identified the benefits that the coastal pipeline will add to their province. And I mentioned here is a 670 kilometers of pipeline, which costs approximately $6 billion, obviously approval from the province, and you're eager to get along with this. But tied into this is the disagreement between the First Nations and the federal government, which sort of creating the issues that we're having now. Alberta and the coastal pipeline. So the Albertan government and their investment management company has bought in shares in the pipeline, and this shows the commitment and confidence that the Alberta government has in this project from the foreseen benefits to their province. Following the number of protests and the lack of progress on the pipeline due to the protests going on, the Alberta government has started to use this opportunity, as we're in today with the current COVID issue going on, and trying to promote the pipeline, stating it's a good time to move forward, seeing that persons are not allowed to gather in great numbers as yet. And all this effort shows the eagerness of the Albertan government to move forward. But notwithstanding that, they do understand the environmental concerns and also the treaty rights and other things that the other First Nations are putting forward. And with this, the Albertan government has their solution and their plan as to sort of do their part in ensuring that the project moves forward. Here we go. The Energy Minister stated in an interview that they don't think anyone should be surprised by the Alberta Pro pipeline. She backs the Albertan government House Leader and Environmental Minister Jason Nixon. To keep the pipeline construction going, Alberta introduced legislation which fines and possible jail time for protesters or persons found damaging the already existing infrastructure. Here, we look at the broader picture for Alberta. Particularly, the Albertan people will see a portion of that investment go directly through their province. A total of $6.2 billion is expected to flow through Alberta, and this in return will generate profit and develop infrastructure for that province. Alberta government believes that without the expansion of the Canada pipeline, Canada on a whole will continue to lose at least $16 billion per year. Whilst the project would benefit Canada on a whole, Alberta government believes that there's a greater benefit for the people of Alberta, and this is why they are pushing this. And they have outlined a few things. They see community programs being benefited, infrastructure improvement, environmental stewardship, and education and training. And this also extends to the First Nation communities that may be impacted by the pipeline going through their lands. The community benefit agreement is formed between the government of Alberta and other investment groups that are aligned with the project. And this agreement outlines specific benefits to communities that will be affected. And most of these communities have already signed on to this agreement. And I'll list a few here and the potential benefit that these communities will gain. And it's key to note that most of these benefits are impacting the environment in a positive way, where the money will be used to develop the environment and ensure that the pipeline moving through these areas will have minimal impact on the environment. Here in Edson, Alberta, there's an estimated $300,000 that will go towards park improvement and extend trail, and this agreement has been signed and awaiting. Here we also have the Parkland Committee. They will see an additional of $225,000 contribution towards funding intelligent community project, right? And extending high-speed internet in those areas that is already lacking those amenities. Yellowhead Community, they will see $114,000 going towards funding new outdoor ice rink and landscaping. All of these investment is geared towards building community. Here, for another community here, another $255,000 going towards constructing new trails. It's key to note, guys, that the Alberta government, whilst acknowledging that the pipeline has its potential to pose risk, the risk they see is not that sufficient where they should gamble the economic prosperity or opportunities that comes with the pipeline. And then, as in government, they are trying to find that balancing act as to how to balanced concerns for the environment, which they have highlighted, and they have not ignored the cost, the possible cost to the environment, but they also sees the need for the environment to be protected, but also the economy to continue turning. Here, they have highlighted and acknowledges problems with the mining industry, pipeline industry, and they have moved on acknowledges, because Alberta is already an area where we have a lot of the drill and the oil sands in that area, and they have seen issues from that, and they have learned a lot from those issues, where they feel like they're in a better place to deal with whatever environmental impact that may come from the pipeline passing through these areas and being extended. This is one thing that Alberta has not turned a blind eye to, the drill rigs that have been left behind and the problem that they pose to the environment and the province. The government has highlighted that over 3,000 wells are still scheduled across Alberta property, and they're still there unattended. And all these things do pose issues and damage to the environment. So of course, turning away from these things and moving towards a safer way of transporting the oil and extracting the oil, it is a worthy investment for the people of Alberta. Here we have some references that we have used, but going back forward, we must highlight that the government of Alberta has also recognized that most of the issues that is causing the holdup on the pipeline it rests primarily between the federal government and the different groups that are demanding recognition for treaty rights and all that, and also the different agreement. As we had mentioned, that there are several First Nations who are already signed onto the project and also approved that the pipeline can move through their areas. The Albertan government has also sided with those First Nations and also wants the issue to be resolved between them and the federal government as it relates to coming to that understanding and also recognizing the proper treaties and also acknowledging that issue. And the government is still committed to the project as their investment is still on hold, and the minister continues to lobby for a quick resolution and also for the project to move forward. So as it relates to the project for the Albertan government, they are still in strong support of it, and they're patiently awaiting for this issue to be resolved so the Alberta economy can continue to grow. That's all a bit here, Miles.
Okay, thanks, Arette. So I have a very specific question. I'm going to become the, let's see how I do this again, reclaim host. There we go. All right, so my question to you is, what specifically is the Alberta government's position with respect to the hereditary chiefs, not the First Nations? Those are the on the reserves, but the hereditary chiefs themselves. What's the Alberta government's position to them?
Can you repeat the question? Is this question posed to me or to the group?
To you and your group.
Okay, 1 second. Let me see if we can go back here.
I think, Miles, I think the Alberta government is, they're opposed to the Wet'suwet'en Chiefs because they're located in BC and they think they're dragging their feet on the pipeline being built.
I say that again, Pete, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think Alberta government does not follow along with the Wet'suwet'en Chiefs because the Wet'suwet'en Chiefs they control the land in BC, not very little and maybe very little in Alberta. So mostly the issue about the Wet'suwet'en Chiefs with the relationship to the Alberta government, they would rather that the Alberta government would rather that the chiefs went along with the pipeline and not oppose it.
That's actually probably very correct. Anything else from anybody else?
Yeah.
Does anybody else in the class have anything to ask or add to that? All right, guys, thanks very much. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
we're going, I'm sorry. All right, guys, so we're going to our last group, number 5, the BC government. So this YouTube is embedded in the PowerPoint, so we'll watch it from here and then take it from there.
All right, we're now recording the British Columbia government stance on the Coastal GasLink pipeline. Our team members are Tom Shitu Adebayo, Sekshi Bagadan, sorry, Mia Giulino, I apologize for that, Michael Webster, Ariana Adams Bridger, and Genyun Kiao. There we go. So it is our stance that the BC government is in favor of this pipeline based on the vast economic benefits that it will have both for the federal government and for the provincial government. These benefits will come through the increased tax revenue from the company, as well as possible tariffs on the exported oil and gas. As well, there will be many jobs created and skilled workers will be trained that may have skills that can be applicable in other fields. The pipeline is also necessary due to certain market changes in the market for liquefied natural gas. In the course of the development for the pipeline, an environmental assessment was completed and a certificate was granted, although it did have several conditions on the behavior of the company. So despite the economic benefits, there are some very relevant issues with the pipeline. Namely is the environmental impact to the land, air, and the water that will come from the construction of the pipeline, which will need which will necessitate the construction of various roads and bridges, as well as possible spills from the pipeline. As well, in our presentation, we tried to include the perspectives of the Indigenous peoples living in the area, and we'd like to show that consultation has been undertaken with the Indigenous people. And despite the public protests, there is a division in the viewpoints in the various Indigenous communities.
The positive implications of the British Columbia pipeline. The pipeline construction is expected to create 5,000 new jobs that will be able to financially support families. After the pipeline is stable and open, there will be between 45 to 75 permanent jobs open. One of the major gas lines benefits for Canada will be the $80 million in revenue that it will create. TC Energy has made a commitment to the Aboriginal businesses and communities to take full advantage of the LNG opportunities to benefit their people. And the next slide.
Yep.
Why is the BC government expanding the pipeline? By Canada having natural gas, they are able to sell it to other countries. Natural gas has been in its lowest pricing in the past 4 years due to a surplus of natural gas. The United States has historically been one of Canada's biggest consumers of Canadian natural gas. One of the major reasons why BC government is pushing for the pipeline is because the LNG Canada project will take fracked gas from the GasLink pipeline and transport it overseas to foreign markets.
Environmental Assessment Act. Environmental assessment can be defined as identifying, estimating, and evaluating the environmental impacts of existing and proposed projects. By conducting environmental studies to mitigate the relevant negative effects prior to making decisions and commitments, the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act 1992 is an act of parliament that was passed by the Government of Canada in 1992. The act requires federal departments, including Environment Canada agencies and Crown corporations, to conduct environmental assessment for proposed projects where the federal government is the proponent or where the project involves federal funding, permits, or licensing. The purposes of the Act were set out as follows: to achieve sustainable development that conserves environmental quality by integrating environmental factors into planning and decision-making process, exercise leadership within Canada and internationally, and to provide access to information and to facilitating public participation. The original version of the Act was repealed in 2012 and rewritten by the Harper government. The new law came into effect on July 6, 2012. There are many facets to the planning for a pipeline and to the regulatory process that are being followed. The Coastal GasLink project is primarily regulated under the Oil and Gas Activities Act and the Environmental Assessment Act. The EAO process provides for the thorough, timely, and integrated assessment of the potential environmental, economic, social, heritage, and health effects that may occur during the life cycle of these projects. And the process provides the meaningful participation by First Nations, the public, the local governments, and federal and provincial agencies. The BC OGC reviews and assesses applications for industry activity, consults with First Nation, ensures industry complies with provincial legislation, and cooperates with partner agencies. The Canadian Environmental Assessment Act 2012 and its regulation establish the legislative basis for the federal practice of environmental assessment in most regions of Canada. The Coastal GasLink pipeline received an international assessment certificate on October 24 in 2014. On May 16, 2018, the certificate was amended after two portions of the pipeline were redesigned. In total, Coastal GasLink's environment assessment certificate is subject to 32 conditions. The company needs to fulfill these legal obligations in order to continue to comply and mitigate its environmental effects. In order to ensure that the pipeline is constructed in conformity with its environmental assessment certificate, the Environmental Assessment Office has established processes.
There are several possible environmental problems with the pipeline. One of the main impacts will be the increased tanker traffic through the Burrard Inlet, which is near the proposed processing facility. This could run the risk of collisions happening in the port or in the inlet, as well as possible leaks into the water surrounding the area, which could harm the local wildlife and marine life, especially the 76 resident orcas in BC's southern coastal waters. Environmentalists have also claimed that the official review of the pipeline didn't go in depth enough into the hazards of the crude oil being spilled from the pipeline and the various negative effects that could have. Additionally, there are negative impacts to the indigenous peoples, particularly, which live around the proposed site for the pipeline. One of the main things that they're worried about is the oil spills, but also there's the environmental impacts that the construction of the pipeline would have, which would negatively impact the hunting and fishing, which are important cultural practices for the peoples there.
This part is for analyze the status of the indigenous people's thought on the BC government policies and also the government's response. I've broken this as 4 aspects. The first part is the agreement between the BC government, engine companies, and the indigenous people. The second part is the BC government explanation of the police officer arrested the demonstrators. And the third part is the different indigenous people have different opinion in this case. I used some of the specific example to explain that. And the fourth one is the last thing that I have to reorient to BC government's attitude and concept summary of the First Nation. Next page, please. So the first one is to talking about the agreements between the BC British Columbia governments and the agent company and indigenous people. From the existing information, it seems like most of the people have the objection to the expansion of the Costco GasLink pipeline due to some of the indigenous people, mainly the five chiefs and also some of their followers. They're against this agreement and they have received a certain public opinion support. So everyone would make some mistake that believe that the majority of the indigenous people are opposite to this strategy of the expansion of Costco gas plant in the BC provincial governments. But the fact is the majority of the people are support this project. The contractor company, TC Energy, has reached the agreements with the 20 Aboriginal elected committees along this way. So this part is the BC government explanation of the police officer arrested the demonstrations. In this part, I have to list of what was happened first. So the first thing was the 5 leaders of the Aboriginal tribe. They asked the BC provincial government to cancel the license for this project. But in this event, they have a discussion. Actually, it's a negotiation, but this negotiation was break down. Once they broke down the negotiation with the government, these leaders began to lead their followers to organize the roadblock to prevent workers for constructing the GasLink pipeline. So then the British Columbia provincial courts issued an injunction requiring the demonstrators to remove the roadblock. And authorized the Royal Canadian police officer to arrest the people who violated the injunction. So the police officer in the Aboriginal land arrested some of the demonstrators. Then the demonstrators began to resist. For example, some of them pasted the metal specs on the road to try to destroy the police officer's car. And then after that, the conflict start to instifate and rose to a national political level. So the British Columbia's government explanation of the reason why the police officer arrested people was some of them are too extreme and have some illegal behaviors. And the police officer arrested them is reasonable and legal. And the police officer did not arrest any innocent indigenous people. So, and also we have to organize this like even the negotiation was broke down. So the attackers still shouldn't have the right to destroy the police officer's car. So nor they can violate the government injunction. This is the legal level of the destruction of the public property of obstruction law enforcement. Next page, please.
Good thing.
Yeah. So this part is to talk about the different indigenous people have a different opinion in this case. According to the CBC Service interview, the people who have opposite opinion with that is not necessarily amount for the majority of the indigenous population, but there are five indigenous leaders inside of this opponent who have like sufficient and prestige to gain the support for the other indigenous groups. So many indigenous people did not dare to express their concerns because they feared to being isolated or punished by the leaders, which also lead on unequal information. Next, please. So the last thing I have to do is to reorient the BC government's attitudes and concept summary of the First Nation. The thing I have to mention is the BC government is not trying to suppress the rights of the Aboriginals, but the strict to the giving the Aboriginals more economic benefits and help the First Nations to have better development. And we also understand the Aboriginal support of the government. Not only do the vast majority of the indigenous people support the BC government policy, but also there are many people in the only opposition group who also support the BC government. So, but those people, they are limited in their speech. And there is historical issues revealed by this instance. The elected committees of the Aboriginal Resources are the products of the relevant federal law and are usually responsible for the things related to the federal government, absolutely including the infrastructures, especially in certain regions. Therefore, the agreement signed by the tribal elected committees is valid. But now those five leaders of this group do not recognize this agreement. The first reason they give is that the expansion project may affect the environment in a negative way. And the second reason is the elected committees are established under the Canadian Indian law. So they believe that elected committees has no power to make this decision about their old ancestral land. But in this case, however, those leaders did not mention that there are many members of the elected committees are also heard, also from those indigenous group, and they are the hereditary leaders of this tribe too. So, and those leaders with two positions also have the right to choose what to choose for the indigenous tribe. So the biggest concern for those opponents is for the environmental issues. The BC provincial government guarantees that we will work with the appropriate environment protection strategy and solutions.
Right, so I'm going to be talking about briefly the negative impact and possible solutions to the negative impact. So just briefing through the Coastal Link pipeline. On October 2nd, BC and Canada approved Trans-Canada Coastal GasLink pipeline through West Wet'suwet'en land. Hereditary chiefs are regarded as the rightful decision makers of the land. The Coastal GasLink pipeline does not have the permission of the West-Western chief and people. Before any big decision is made on the West-Western or any First Nations land, a relationship and a treaty must have been signed in order to proceed with any construction. Canadian government violated this treaty, while the West-Western people also feels that this construction doesn't benefit their natural land resources. For example, clean water and land. And it's like a cycle, because in the clean water, they have fishes, they have animals which they eat, which could overall in turn affect them. The fact of the matter is that the Coastal Link pipeline is not a conventional pipeline, and on both ends of the pipeline, there are bad economics and terrible climate policy. It is a threat to the Western nations' way of life and environment because pipeline spills are not predictable. which would negatively impact the Western nations land in the long run. And there's a short video that we will just briefly explain the whole scenario.
There have been protests to this energy pipeline in BC. However, I guess in the most recent, I want to say report by the Montreal Economic Institute, you have suggested that band councils are in favor of this project.
In fact, all the band councils of the First Nations that are affected directly by this project have signed on the project, and they consulted widely the members of their nations. So there's an agreement that has been signed. There is a duty to consult, and this was done. But however, there's no duty to get unanimity on a project, and there's also no veto right to any smaller group. And in the First Nations, as in the population at large, it's impossible to get unanimity in favor of any project. So here we're in a situation in which, in fact, probably a small percentage of the people who are not satisfied with this project are blocking it. And I think that's a major problem.
Are these protests, I mean, I'm just wondering about the makeup of them. Is this something, it's not something new, but how has this kind of emerged? Where did this emerge from in the last month or 2 months?
Well, there's an elected council for each band, and they approve in each territory. They approved the project. They negotiated. They got compensation, and they consulted. But in the First Nations, there's often elder, let's say, statesmen who are not elected, who are traditionally have a voice, and some of them, a minority as I understand, are not in favor of the project. So in fact, they simply decided, well, we're going to block this project. And I think that they are probably encouraged by activists in the East.
I'm wondering.
All right, so
oh, sorry.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I'm gonna continue. It is quite interesting that some other First Nations are in support of this pipeline, while the people directly affected have tried to stop its construction. The Western Nation have voiced out their stand on the pipeline, but the Canadian government continue with their project anyways, which has led to the protests and blockades and retaliation. It is quite difficult to think of possible solutions in a situation where there are both supporters and oppositions. And some of the possible solutions me and my group members have thought about are one, keeping the protests and blockades going. So like if the railways are blocked or territories are blocked and barricaded, resources won't be able to flow through Canada as much as it once did. It's going to obstruct the flow of the norm, and it's going to hinder. Yes, it's going to help prevent the coastal pipeline from proceeding. Another solution is economic reconciliation. That is, most of this, not most of them, but I'll assume some of them are maybe like not as economically well off as others. So if they're living high standard of life, if they had high standard of living, it's going to make things easier because they won't really focus too much on that because they know they have other options. And the third one is negotiations between the provincial government and the Western Nation. That is compensation. So, for example, like if a treaty or a deal can be made with the provincial government and the Western Nation, they can come together. They can compensate the Western people for this. If there's any, for example, if there's any complications, they can compensate them with money or jobs. That's basically leading to my last solution, more job opportunities. So if more money is pumped into this Western nation and they have no they have something to fall back on, I feel that yes, these are some of the possible solutions. In conclusion, while the majority of the First Nations are in support of this, some others fear that their land is at stake and their way of living is threatened. In fact, a major concern with the pipeline is its effect on the land and possible outcomes resulting from spills. If the Western nation are assured by the provincial and federal government on compensation and more economic opportunities, that is, if the government can provide alternative source of income, if there's any complications, I think the Western nation will be more open to the pipeline as long as the standard of living improves in that territory. Additionally, it is the case of the economic benefits of the pipeline to outweigh the possible harms to the environment. To limit this negative environmental effects, the BC has attached conditions to the environmental assets assessment certificates needed by the corporations to engage in the construction of the pipelines. These conditions will not entirely prevent environmental damages, but will limit it to the point where it's acceptable.
All right, and here are our works cited. And that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Michael. Does anybody in your group have anything else to say in addition to the video, the PowerPoint? All right, guys. So that's it. Great job, everybody. This is a new kind of thing, obviously, that you have to do since we're not in the class. So it's a little more complicated doing it amongst yourselves from your different residences. So good for you. A lot of really hard work went into all that. So I really appreciate it. So remember, everybody, please basically fill out the Google form for the score sheet for the group presentations and send it to me today or tomorrow if you can. I'd appreciate it. When you do, it's a 10 out of 10 for participation for tonight's class. So that's obviously a good thing. All right, again, the exam is next Tuesday. I've set the exam, so I can tell you it is a 100 questions, true, false, multiple choice, just like the midterm exam. Oh, Valerie, you have a question?
Yeah, about the presentation.
Sure.
It's like I'm in group 2. So group 2 is a required where I have to enter something. There's no NA option. On the presentation thing.
That's probably true. So just put, they probably all are that way. So thank you for saying that. Just put, all 5s in it, and your scores won't count because I know who's in which group. Yeah, you're right, Valerie. All the questions are required. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. So thanks, guys. That's a good question. All right. So back to the final exam. So again, 100 questions, true, false, multiple choice. I can tell you that about 20 questions are on the first 5 chapters that was covered up to the point of the midterm. And so 75, 80 questions deal with chapters 6 forward. We have some more hands raised, so hang on a sec. Georgia?
Yeah, I was just wondering if it's open book again.
Yeah, it's totally open book, guys, so not a problem. It's exact same format as the midterm. Any other questions, everybody? All right, guys, that's super. I appreciate it. There's the end of the class. Good luck, everybody, on Tuesday. I appreciate you taking the class. I've enjoyed it a lot. Thank you very much, guys. Take care.